All right, we have. Let me start by just showing what campus reform does. We play campus reform videos all the time. They just one of the things they do is they go on campus and they talk to students about their kind of left-wing ideology, their ignorance, the things they know. Here is one they put out of talking about how conservative women are treated on campus.
The conservative women are sort of looked at as anti-women.
Personally, I think they're just like not educated or maybe hiding something. I don't know. There has to be something wrong.
Power to everyone that has their opinions, but I feel like most women need to be liberal in today's day and age just because we obviously are still not treated equally.
So what would you say the response towards conservative women is here on this campus?
It's definitely more of a negative approach to conservative women.
Yes, people aren't very comfortable sharing that because they're afraid of backlash.
I just think that like liberal women are more welcomed on college campuses because they're so liberally biased.
I would say definitely more beneficial to be liberal or progressive here.
I feel like if you're, this kind of sucks, I feel like if you're a conservative woman, you kind of get like, people don't really respect you as much and they're kind of harsh to you.
I think there's been more backlash against conservative ideas.
If you have opposing views to the majority, I guess it's not very accepted.
That's not very acceptable. Hana Locker is one of these conservative, ill-educated, bigoted conservative women. She's the programming manager as well as an opinion writer for Campus Reform. And I just love their stuff. We play it here all the time. Her last piece at Campus Reform deals with how and why being an open conservative on today's college campuses is a risky proposition. She also founded an anti-sex trafficking nonprofit, and I'd love to talk to her about that if there's time. Hana, have we got you?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to hear you. I can't see you, but I'll assume I'll assume the people can see you. Oh, there you are. Good to see you. You know, let's start with Campus Reform because all I really know about them are these videos, which I love. Where did they come from? How did they get started?
So the videos are just one part of what Campus Reform does. We publish about 9 to 10 stories a day, just really exposing the liberal bias and abuse on college campuses. So we started with the Leadership Institute. We planted about 1,900 conservative and libertarian student groups on campuses across the nation. And these students started running into a lot of problems like free speech zones, and they started getting their grade docked for things like not being politically correct or using gender neutral pronouns. And they found themselves in a really difficult situation. They were being treated unfairly for their conservative views. And nobody was reporting on it. No one was paying attention to these issues. No one knew what was going on. The mainstream media ignored it. So there was really a void, and that's where Campus Reform kind of came in 2009, and we started reporting on these issues and exposing them. And it turns out the American people were really interested in these stories, and now almost every conservative outlet has a section dedicated to higher education because people are really concerned. You know, parents want to know where they're sending their students. Taxpayers want to know what their taxes are going to, funding these ridiculous programs, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But it really is just crazy to see what these institutions of higher indoctrination, as I like to call them, are turning into.
Well, is it really that bad? I mean, I know conservatives get so upset about this, and we have Ben Shapiro here who goes out and gives speeches and starts riots, which is unbelievable, and they keep saying, well, Ben is making the campus unsafe, and I keep thinking Ben comes in here every day and we're all perfectly safe. It's not him doing the causing the trouble. But is this really as bad a problem as conservatives think it is?
It really is. And, sometimes we can laugh at it when we see the courses out there like Fighting Fat Phobia at Princeton or the University of Pennsylvania course called How to Waste Time on the Internet. We laugh at those. But, for the students I work with a network of 100 student journalists on all different campuses across the country, public and private. And they're risking their reputation, their academic standing, and often their safety just to stand up for their most basic First Amendment rights on their college campuses, and they really do face the backlash for it. We have students, look at Berkeley, they're in the middle of several lawsuits, the college Republicans are right now. So these students, they go to school thinking they're gonna have a good time, drink some beer, get an education, hang out with friends, but they're learning at 19, 20 years old how to file a lawsuit, how to stand up against their administrators and professors. It really is bad. It's a daily struggle for them just to exist as a conservative on college campuses. They're routinely spit on, harassed, and stalked at Berkeley alone. You look, like you were talking about Ben Shapiro. I mean, he can't even speak on a college campus without absurd security fees. And protests and riots breaking out.
You know, I get people write to me all the time, students write to me all the time, how can I live with integrity in this atmosphere where it's going to cost me grades, cost me, friends? People must come to you I mean, I just imagine when I see those guys going out and doing those videos, I just imagine students must come to them and say, basically, help, get me out of here. Do you have advice for people? Like, how do you maneuver through college without getting thrown out, without getting ostracized, and yet have integrity? What would you tell those people?
Well, you really can't guarantee they won't face the backlash or be ostracized in class. That's honestly the reality of the climate on campus. But the most important thing students can do is know their rights and know their principles. I always tell the students I work with, know how to defend principles and not people. Know your rights. Know how know your school's policies. A lot of times students are told they can't speak or they can't hand out constitutions or host an event. But really, when you look at the school's policy, the schools are breaking their own rules. So as long as students are aware of their rights, aware of their campus policies, even on the private schools, knowing the policies they have, that can really help students along the way. But like I said, we can't guarantee they won't face being ostracized. But at Campus Reform, we put these students on national television, and we're really starting to see students get their voice back. They see other students go on TV, talk about their stories on national television, and you can see they're starting to feel empowered. They realize groups like Campus Reform are standing behind them to expose their stories, to give them the legal action they need to stand up to their universities. But it's a long, arduous battle. It's so funny to see how the campus left is reacting ever since Trump got elected president. The political correct ceiling is just absolutely shattered, and college campuses are just in a perpetual state of outrage, and they will do anything to silence conservatives.
I work out here in Hollywood, and obviously the situation is kind of the same, but the one difference in Hollywood is, of course, they have to make money. And so there is this little shift going on where there is some conservative entertainment, some Christian entertainment being made because it pays the bills, it brings in the money. So they do their woke, identity politics garbage, which bombs repeatedly, and then they will occasionally make something for actual human beings who want to see it. What is the recourse? I mean, parents especially are paying money to have their children turned into little monsters, who can't even have a discussion without feeling destroyed. What is the recourse? I mean, what is the best way that parents and the rest of us can fight back?
Well, like I said, just knowing their rights, really knowing their most basic principles, and also just exposing the stories and calling your lawmakers, calling local officials, holding professors and administrators accountable is the biggest thing. A lot of times, these universities, they cower to their donors and their alumni. Once the stories are out there, the biggest thing is just spreading awareness of what's really going on these campuses. A lot of times what we see, this is a top-down approach. It's not so much, I always say you can't blame the students for being indoctrinated the way that they are. This is coming from a top-down approach from administrators. We see administrators not only turn a blind eye to what's really going on, but they reward it. So the professor at Orange Coast College who called Trump's election an act of terrorism was awarded Faculty of the Year. And the professor at California State University who was caught on camera, as we reported, punching and physically assaulting a college Republican on campus, he was recently just reinstated. So this behavior is rewarded. So what we really need is accountability. We need to constantly keep putting pressure on the schools to do something about it. We at Campus Reform, we keep track of what we call campus victories, where we see a policy change or a university apologizing for an extreme liberal bias or abuse. So that number continues to grow only because students are, they keep coming to us with these stories. Sometimes they have to send an anonymous tip because they're so afraid of the backlash. In that case, we report on it, but it's really just about the pressure, keeping pressure on.
And what about Trump? You mentioned him and you mentioned the backlash. I mean, it's something I've seen in Hollywood too. It just drove the left insane. He drives the left insane. But the other thing that I hear is that college-age kids do not like Donald Trump, that they don't like the cut of his jib, they don't like the way he talks, they fear, they take on board some of this idea that he's racist, which actually, that I don't think is true, but they do seem to dislike him. Do you get that feedback as well?
Oh, absolutely. The rhetoric on campus, the anti-Trump rhetoric is just off the charts. It's funny, you were playing that video earlier of the sentiment of conservative women on college campuses. And, the campus left likes to tell you if you're a female, you have to fit inside of the small progressive feminist box that they want to put you in. And they call that women's empowerment. But when I look at President Trump and his cabinet, we see more women elected to high-ranking positions than ever before in history. And then we see professors at the New School tweet a storm of tweets saying, saying to her students, if you're a conservative woman, if you attended the March for Life, then sit down and shut up. So essentially, the campus left is saying, if you don't think exactly like we do, sit down and shut up. You are morally depraved, unworthy of being part of the conversation. And this is all rooted in this anti-conservative groupthink, Trump-hating, perpetual state of outrage that we're seeing on college campuses. And yes, it's very much an anti-Trump rhetoric. We see courses offered at Ivy League schools on how to resist Trump. We saw just the other day, we reported on a Northeastern professor. We recorded him in class saying that he hopes President Trump dies. And this is the norm on college campuses. Yeah. It's just typical.
What about on the right, though? I wonder about right-wing students, conservative students. I mean, there are obviously people in the conservative movement who don't like Trump. Are conservative students put off by Trump? I mean, is he hurting the conservative cause at the millennial level, do you think?
It's a big mix of everything. The real difference is that the conservatives, from what I see on campuses, they're at least willing to have a conversation about it. And that's the main difference between the campus left and the campus right. Yeah. On the campus right, the students I work with range from libertarian to conservative and everything in between. But the bottom line is they have their differences about Trump, but they talk about it. They engage in robust dialogue and debate, and they want to understand. And, they have reasons for not supporting Trump. Not every conservative college student is on the Trump train, and I respect that. They at least talk about it, though. Yeah. The real problem on college campuses is it's the end of conversation. We don't want to hear it at all. We don't even want to hear you say his name.
It's amazing. People come in here to the Daily Wire who have worked for left-wingers and are always shocked by the level of debate and openness and conversation and friendly, even though intense debate that goes on, and they always say they never see that on the liberal side. So basically, a final question about this. Are you hopeful about this? I mean, do you feel like the tide is turning, or there's any light at the end of the tunnel, to use as many cliches as I possibly can?
Slowly but surely, we are starting to see some differences for the better. At the same time, it is a scary place to be when we're seeing my entire generation leave campus completely indoctrinated. I look at Google, the average age of a Google employee is 28 years old. That's my age. This is my generation. And we see James Damore get fired for writing a memo about the biological differences between men and women. This is my generation that pushed him out and completely silenced him. And I think we're going to see more and more of that infiltrate the workplace if we don't nip this in the bud and start holding universities and higher education accountable. We can only expect more behavior like that in the workplace. If students are running and hiding in their safe space when they hear President Trump's name or a conservative idea, how are these students supposed to, enter the real world where they have to deal with leaders like Kim Jong-un or deal with, the complex issues we face as a nation? So I really do worry about the future, and that's why I work with campus reform, because I really do see the implications that this has on society at large if we don't stop this.
Great. Hana, thank you very much. I noticed as I was reading your introduction, which I did not know until I was reading your introduction, that you have founded an anti-sex trafficking nonprofit. I would really like you to come back on and talk about that. I feel it is one of the buried issues of the day, basically a slave trade going on under our nose. So I hope you'll come back again and talk to me about that as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much, Hana. It's really good talking to you.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Bye. That gives me hope. Come on, that makes me feel, that actually makes me, she's worried, but I feel better, That's